As you know, creating a profitable menu doesn't always mean using the most expensive cuts of meat. Today I'd like to explore with you a few alternative ways that you can use the strip loin and add more dollars to your bottom line. So on the strip loin here, you're going to have what we call a little back strap that comes across here. Really heavy connective tissue. We're going to want to trim that off. It'll break down during a real slow cook, but it doesn't really look that nice. So we're going to want to trim that off. Okay. Once we have that removed, this is basically just about ready to do whatever you want with it. You're going to want to feel around, see if there's any heavy pieces of fat. You might want to trim it up just a little bit more. This could be roasted as is. You may want to tie it a little bit more of a uniform roast. You can cut steaks out of it. You can also cut what we'll call a chateau cut, split it in half, so you have two mini roasts. You're doing carving stations, maybe there's multiple carving stations at a party, or multiple proteins. So if there's multiple proteins, you don't want to have this big hunking piece of meat on someone's plate when they already have chicken and fish and all that. So you give them a smaller piece of meat. So you roast this and you carve it, right? It looks beautiful. I like to tie my roasts. One of the things that does is it gives it a uniform look, but also cooks more consistent when you're tying it. It pulls it all together, so you have thicker pieces at one end, or it's a little thinner in the middle. It tends to bring it all together so it's the same size all the way through. So it's consistent cook, it's medium rare from one end to the other. So the way I like to tie a roast is get your first knot going. And I'm sure everybody ties a little different, but I was taught a little trick. You tie that first knot, and then, you just wrap it around. Pull it tight. Just keep wrapping it around. Instead of cutting a knot, retying it every time, tying a knot again, like you see a lot of butchers do. It looks nice in the retail sector, but if the customer's not going to see this with the actual rope on there, or the string, there's no need for you to do that. And one thing I like here too is, once you're done, all you got is two cuts to make. You cut one end, you pull the string off, then you cut the other end. And then you're going to ensure that the customers don't end up chewing on any string later on. So I like to roast these at a high temperature of about 450 degrees, 425 if you have a convection oven. You're going to go in about 15 minutes in that oven at that high temp, and what that's going to do is sear the outer part of the meat and develop some great color. Then I like to drop that temperature down to 300, sometimes even 275. It all depends upon how much time you have. One important part of roasting is actually putting this on a pan that has a rack. Really important. What that rack does is it allows that heat to get underneath it. I got a 450 degree oven preheated. I'll place this in here. Like I said, about 15 minutes, 15, maybe even 20. You take a look at the product and you look at how well it's starting to get color. Okay, now it's been about 15 minutes, and we're going to check on our roast that we have in the oven. Yeah, there we go. We got some awesome color here. Starting to look real good. Color and flavor, it's all about developing flavor, right? So that's the idea of that searing of that roast. So now we're going to turn the oven down to 300 degrees, put these back in, and we're going to check that full strip loin in about an hour, and the chateau cut, the half strip loin, we're going to check that in about 35 minutes. Okay, so we take the roast out of the oven. I got it to about a medium rare, 130 degrees internal, and then I let it rest. That is so important. So you took the time earlier on to pull it out, let it come up to room temperature. You season it real well, you sear it in the oven, you cook it real nice and slow. pull it out of the oven, worst thing you can do is slice into it immediately. You need to let that rest, probably a little roast like this, maybe 10 to 12 minutes, and the larger full strip loin, you want to let that go for 15 to 20 minutes. You want to rest it in a warm place, maybe tent it with some foil, but what that's going to do is make sure that all the juices that are in there are evenly distributed and every slice is going to be juicy. If you cut into it right away, that first slice or two is going to taste great, but then everything else is going to be dry. All that blood is just going to be all over the board and not in the meat anymore. So when you're slicing, you want to just make sure that you use the full knife, a slicing knife, nice and long. Look at that. Look at that beautiful color. It's even all the way through. Only way you're going to achieve that is if you do those steps that I told you about, is letting the meat come out, actually come up to room temperature, and then you have to let it rest after you pull it out. And also, a big part of that is that high temperature that you sear it with, and then that low temperature to finish cooking it with. You know, prime rib's a great piece of meat too, but this is an alternative. It's actually a little bit cheaper too, so it's something a little different, but all in all, you're going to have an amazing experience with this cut of meat. Now, another thing that we showed you with this cut is we split it down the middle, split it in half, and what you have right here, the chateau cut we call it. So that's going to give you a smaller roast. You know, maybe you have multi-proteins or multi-proteins on a carving station or at a banquet. This way they can put more food on the plate, just smaller pieces, and you can manage it. It doesn't take as long to go into the oven. If you found this information useful, you can be in touch with us in multiple ways. Visit our website at www.sterlingsilvermeats.com. By clicking the food service affiliates link, you can learn about recipes for these featured cuts, brand and waitstaff tools, promotions, and more. Make sure your restaurant is enrolled in Signature Club, a rewards program allowing you to build points for you to earn free culinary items and apparel just by purchasing Sterling Silver Premium Meats. We are also available for you at our 800 number or by email. The Sterling Silver team will be happy to help with questions you may have. Sterling Silver Premium Meats, the medium for your culinary expression and your business success.